to talk about how to take care of our instrument. Before we do that, I need to talk about the different parts of the euphonium. So we've already learned about the lead pipe. That is where the mouthpiece is going to go onto the instrument. This up here is called the bell. It's where the sound comes out. Then we have our valves. Now, depending on your instrument, sometimes euphoniums or baritones have 3 or sometimes 4 valves. This one has 4. So we're going to talk about the different parts of the valves in just a second. And then there's also slides. These are tuning slides that correspond with the valves. Okay, this one right here is the main tuning slide. I can tell that because the spit valve, or water key if you want to be all fancy, is attached to this larger slide. That's where I'm going to tune. So it's important that I have this where it moves freely. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. And I also want to make sure that the valves move up and down freely. So I'm going to show you how to oil the valves. First thing I want to do is the top of the valve, there's a cap. Just want to gently unscrew that to the left. All right. Then I'm going to hold my instrument and I'm going to open the oil. This one has a little lock on it, so push that down so that I can twist the oil top off. There we go. Now I'm going to raise the valve. Now, you can take the valves out, for example. However, I teach students to keep the valve in there, but just raise it so that you don't get the valves mixed up. If you put the wrong valve in the wrong spot, it will not make the proper sound. So all I do is raise this a little, being careful to kind of hug it, and I'm going to put the oil on there. Make sure when you're doing this that you don't get it onto your clothes. Then I'm going to put the valve back in to the valve casing. Now, there is a little notch that has to fit into a slot inside the valve. You should see a little notch in there. So when I put it in, I have to make sure that I twist it until it fits into that notch perfectly. Then I'm going to push down a little bit and then tighten the valve. Now it's going to work much better. Now, just so you know, inside of the valve, there's also a spring. This spring is what keeps the valve so that it can move up and down. So I'll put that back in there. I just wanted to show you that so you would be aware. Now, on the back, you will also see that at the bottom of the valve, this will also unscrew. It's important to not lose these bottom pieces. So I suggest you not taking that apart unless you are doing a full clean or you're giving it a bath, which we can talk about later. So I've oiled my valve. Now I need to oil my slides. I don't actually use oil for that. I'm going to use tuning slide grease. This is just one that I have. So I'm going to take the lid off. Notice when I put the instrument on the ground, I'm still making sure to hold onto it so it doesn't flop over. I don't want anything to get dented. These slides, if they get dented slightly, they can mess up really easily. So when I pull this off, I'm going to use 2 hands. I'm just going to take it off like this. I'll take a little grease on my finger and rub that into the inner part of the tuning slide. Then I carefully put it back on how it came. Now sometimes this can be a little tricky. You have to kind of wiggle it a little till it gets perfectly where it needs to go. And there you go. And I just work this valve so that that grease works into the tuning slide. Now, if you notice that there's a popping sound when you play, that's usually because you need to let the water out of the water key. Sometimes I call it the spit valve. To do that, I'm going to be careful so that I don't get the water on myself. Put my lips over my mouthpiece, push down the water key, and blow air. That will get that popping sound out. And that's all there is to maintenance.